Hi everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel, Excel with Solo. Here we share techniques, tips, and tricks of Microsoft Excel.
We'll be learning how to convert our stacked data into an unstacked data. So what that means is that by the end of this video, you will have learned how to take your data from this format to this format. Now, to start with, we need to understand what a stacked data is or what it looks like. An example of that is what you're seeing here. So a stacked data is when you have the different fields in a record, one on top of the other. The date, name, and amount, an example here, and they are one on top of the other. They now have the different records in that data set also stacked one on top of the other. So what we intend to achieve is to convert the stacked data, like I said before, into an unstacked data. So in this video, we're using four methods. All right, we're going to be using the find and replace method. We're going to be using the go to special method. The third method is a combination of the sequence, index, and count A functions. And the last method will be the power query method. Now, let me point out here that for the third method, which involves the sequence function in Excel, it's only available for Office 365 users. So they will be the most want to benefit the most from that third method. Without wasting much more time, let's get into this. So for our first method, which is the find and replace method, you're just going to copy the headings here, the column headings, and do a transpose. Make it bold. All right. So to get this up and running, we are going to have type equal to sign and make it equal to the first occurrence of the date. Under the name column, we're going to do equal to the first occurrence of the name. Then for the third column, which is the amount, we take the first occurrence of the amount. To give Excel something to go by, like a pattern to go by, we're going to do for the second one too, so that I can see a pattern. The second date, the second name, and the second amount. So that done, we're going to now highlight that data set that we are having under our new column headings and do Control H. So what are we looking for? We're going to look for the equal to sign and replace it with any prefix of our choice. In this case, we're going to replace it with so love. So once we click the replace all, every equal to sign will be replaced by so love. So I'm going to drag this all the way down. Let's bring it up the way here. So what that simply does is that it helps us to uh, bring the cell reference for each of the column into the appropriate places. Let me put it that way. So if you check here, the first occurrence of the date is in the row one. All right. The second occurrence is in the row four. The third occurrence is in row seven and in row 10 and on and like that. You check the name. Also, the first occurrence is in row two, the second occurrence is in row five, the third occurrence is in row eight, and on and on. The same applies to the amount. This we cannot achieve ordinarily by doing the equal to sign and dragging without replacing the equal to sign with this prefix. So now that we have done that, we need to go back and reverse the process. We're going to type our soul of here and use the equal to sign to replace it. We click replace all and we get our data set here. However, you find that we still have zeros here. Just use the container formatting to get that out of the way. So we click on new rule, use formula. We come here and say equal to the first here, let's remove the absolute reference equal to 0. So if any of these cells is equal to 0, what do we want to happen? We want to turn the font color to white. The font color to white. All right, equal to here, and that's exactly what we get. Turn the font color into white, and we have our full data unstacked from here to here using the find and replace method. So the second method, like I said to us before, is the go to special method. Now, this method has some similarities to the first method we looked at, which is the find and replace method. And what similarity we have is we are going to use the equal to sign as well to refer. Oh, before we do that, we need to get the column headings quickly here. Transpose, make it bold. So go to equal to sign the date here. We're going to put the name instead of directly beside the date like we did for the find and replace method. We now put that, I think adjacent is what it's called, in cell I4. Then the amount goes to the cell J5. So we highlight this and drag it all the way down. I think enough to leave room. Okay. So what we need to do next is to go to the go to special method. Control G will give us that option. So you go to special, click blanks, and say OK. Now, once you OK that, the system is going to select all the blank cells, and you right click and say delete, and you choose the shift cells up and you say OK, and our data gets automatically stacked together. So gets unstacked, I mean, automatically gets unstacked. So to get rid of the 0 like we did before, highlight our data set. I'm going to speed through this. Go to conditional formatting, new row, use formula equal to, what was the first one? H3 equal to 0. What do you want to do? You want to make all the fonts white wherever you have 0. And that solves it. And that's the go to special method, the second method that we're looking at. If you can compare that, we have the same output for the find and replace method and the go to special method. Now, the third method. So our next method is, of course, the combination of the sequence, index, and count A method. So like every other one, let's start by having our column headings in place, put it here, make it bold. So what I would need to do is I want to explain what each of these function does very briefly. I will start with the sequence function. Sequence function simply generates using 4 parameters. One of them is the only required parameter. Using the row, the column, the start, and the step. So type sequence, how many rows? We are going to assume, say, 10 rows. Of course, we know it's 3 columns. All right. Start and stop, we don't need at this point in time. Close the bracket, and it gives us these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that. So we have 10 rows and 3 columns of numbers. You're going to see the significance of this when we look at the index function. So let me delete this. Now, the index function looks at an array and returns the item in a particular position in the array. Let me quickly demonstrate that. So the index function here, what is our array? This is our array, our data set. Let me lock that in place. Okay, so we're going to tell it to give us the second item in that array, and that is obviously Sheldon Oyekunle. If I change this number here, to say 5, it's going to give me a different name, a different item, at least the item at that particular position. If I come and do 6, the item at position 6 is 31,745, and that's what we get. So here, instead of entering our positional number manually, we're going to use the sequence function to generate those numbers dynamically. So we're going to type sequence row numbers. Let's say assume 10. All right, and you know why I mentioned this later in the video. And our column number, of course, we know is 3. Close the bracket and press enter. All right, so let's convert this to a proper date through formatting. Yep. So we basically have our data basically ready as it is, but we have a lot of hard coded items in it, and that is where the count a function comes in. The count a function just simply counts number of non-blank cells in an array, right? So what we're going to use that to do, we're going to use, instead of imputing our 10, all right, manually, we're going to use the count a function to generate the number of items in our array and divide it by the number of columns that we have, which is 3, right? So you do count a, all right, our array, we lock that in place, close the bracket and divide it by 3, press enter, and our data is ready from being stacked to being unstacked using a combination of the sequence, index, and count a method. And finally, we have the Power Query method. So how does this work? Power Query is an add-on that was introduced to Office, to Excel in version 2010 as an add-in 2013, but going forward from 2016, it became a permanent resident, so to say, a permanent feature in Excel. So Power Query is a very, very powerful tool to use. So let's get to it and see how it works. So the first thing to do when you're trying to use Power Query is to convert your data set to a table. And we can do this by doing Control T. Control T is asking me if my table has header, and I say no. I uncheck that and said okay. So it converted my data set to a table. Go to data and I go to the get and transform group where I choose from table or range. So a snapshot of my table is loaded directly into the Power Query editor. So first of all, let me change the name of this to unstacked data. Unstacked data. Then delete this step, apply step, because I don't need that step applied. So the first thing I'm going to do now is, next thing I'm going to do rather, is to add an extra column, the column that bears the index for this record. And what we are doing that for is, you will see briefly, it's going to start from 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way down. Now, this is meant to generate another column that will have zeros for the first set of record, 1 for the next record, 2s, and on like that. So to get that, we're going to divide these index numbers by the number of columns we have. So we'll go to this standard here and say divide the integer. And what is the integer we are dividing by? We divide by 3. And what that does for us is to give us a set of zeros, set of 1, set of 2 for each of data. So I don't need this index column again. So I'm moving it. Now, I'm going to move this column that contains my headings beside this integer division column. What does that do? it's actually going to form the column heading for my final data. So when I combine these two columns, oops, not that one, these two columns here, I'll go to transform and say I want to pivot this column. That means I want to change the arrangement of this column in such a way that I want to change the arrangement of this data in such a way that one of the columns become my headings and the other one becomes a set of records. So let's do that and you will see it in action. So what we are going to see here in this dialog box is asking us which of the column is our value column. So and the value column is the column 2. Now go to the advanced to make sure that it's not aggregating our data. So we see we don't want to aggregate. We click OK. And what we get is our date, name, and amount as the column heading, and our record is unstacked automatically. So I want to delete this column here. I don't need it. I want to convert this column to proper date. I think that solves it. So the next thing for me to do is just to load my data back into my sheet. So I say close and load to because I want to load it specifically here. What is it? Existing sheet. I will choose where I want to load to and say okay, and my data is populated right there and then. So I've gone to see that all the data generated by each of the methods are similar one to another because they gave us the same outcome. I hope you have learned something in this video. Please, if this video has been useful to you, kindly click on the like button. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe and kindly share the video with your friends who I'm sure will probably need the knowledge you've acquired in this video. And I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.